Hey VC, Dave here. We had a record show last weekend that I went to here in town. It was a really fun event, and actually there were a lot of people there, which I was happy to see that that the format is still vital, and that more young people now more than ever are or I won't say more than ever. Vinyl was pretty strong back in the 70s and 80s, but a lot of people are still buying vinyl and interested in vinyl, the format. So anyway, I went over to the record show. I was really looking forward to it, and as you might guess, there was a lot of rock music, which I'm not really too interested in now. I mean, I was young once too, believe it or not. And that's what I was really into, but now I'm kind of drifted into some other things like classical and jazz and what have you. But I did find a few records, so let's get to it. This is one I picked up. This is by Jimmy Spears, and I used to have this album a long time ago. I didn't own it myself, but I reviewed the album. I went to Texas Tech up in Lubbock back in college, and I met with the movie reviewer there. Forget his name now, but asked him if I could do some album reviews for the Texas Tech newspaper, and he said yeah, sure. And he kind of set me up with the radio station there, the college radio station, and then I had albums myself that I would review, and I had a roommate too, and he kind of wanted to get in on it too. We were both pretty big music fans, but this is one of them I did back in the day. I like the cover. It kind of looks like oh golly, a Dore, I believe that's his name, D-O-R-E, Gustav, I think it's his first name, Gustav Dore, artwork. I don't know if that's who did it or not. Let's see. Well, it says cover compliments of Monte Luna, so I don't know, designed by someone else. So anyway, it looks like that. But this album here is, I've seen it on the VC before, and it's pretty pop oriented, I guess you might say, but not real, not pop. I'd say pop singer songwriter. It's real kind of lush or orchestrated in certain areas, and of course it's also pretty lyric inclined, which I'd almost wish he maybe had done some instrumentals on here as well. But it was nice to hear the album again. So yeah, here's another one I had back in the day too. This is or I reviewed back in the day. It's Paul Horn Inside. Here he is playing. The album cover's a little worn, but the inside looks nice. This is where he plays inside the Taj Mahal. And what it is just kind of acoustical solo flute pieces, as best as I can remember. I haven't listened to this one yet again, but I remember enjoying it. It's a real relaxing album. One of the first sort of new age albums that I kind of got into back into the day. The album cover, I think, leaves a little bit to be desired, but that might have been what the record company designed for him. This is on might be some independent label. Here it even had the inside sheet with it that tells all about how he got to do the album inside the Taj Mahal. Yeah, it's on Epic Records. But Yeah, pretty good album for what it is. I mean, it's not something I listen to all the time, but it's a real interesting album whenever you get in the mood for it. So yeah, Paul Horn. I found another Leo Kottke album, and I haven't heard this yet, but I assume I'll like it. Just about any Leo Kottke album, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty much worth having. He kind of plays in a folk style, folkish style. He doesn't sing. He mostly plays, you know, folkish tunes, sort of flat picks and finger picks, and plays 6 and 12 strings. It says he plays on here with a Gibson J45 and a Martin 12 string. Let's see here, and that's about it. But yeah, probably should be a pretty good album. Looks like it was a cutout. There you go. Chrysalis label. So the album's kind of damaged too. I need to break out my rubber cement and glue it back together, but I can do that. This is one by Stanley Turrentine or Turrentine. I have one other album by him, which is an earlier album, and I saw this in like more or less a bargain box. It was $1, I think, and thought I'd check it out. I've played one side, and I kind of figured it might be a little bit more funky, have a little bit more of a funk or R&B groove to it, which it does a little bit, but that's okay with me. I mean, I kind of neglected a little bit of some of that back in the day. Let's see, there's some good people on here that play with him though. Let's see if I recognize any. I don't really. I thought I had recognized some of the guitarists on here earlier, but I might be mistaken. But anyway, it's a light album, kind of a lighter album, kind of funky, or R&B like I said. But yeah, good album. Found this too. This is the Modern Jazz Quartet, Together Again, 1984 on Pablo Records, and I have one of their first albums, and this is a much later album, so I was glad to hear it. It is you know, you still got the vibes by oh golly, what's his name? Milt Jackson plays vibes, and I don't know if this is all the original members, but it might be. It came out in 1984, and of course liner notes by Nat Hentoff again. But yeah, I kind of thought this was mostly like, kind of sounded like it had standards on it, although I don't recognize any of the song titles, but it was a good album to pick up, that's for sure. Got this one as well. This is Anthony Davis, Hemispheres. It's on the I think it's the Gramavision. Yeah, Gramavision Records. Oops, I need to change out my plastic sleeves. Anyway, it's a little bit like the album cover might get you to think it is. It's not real wild free jazz, but it kind of gets into that free jazz area, which I like. And again, it has several different people on here that I probably don't recognize. There's Leo Smith on trumpet, and it has trumpet, flute, saxophones, clarinet, trumpet, trombone, violin, cello, drums, piano, a little bit of everything. Anthony Davis plays piano. So yeah, this is sort of kind of right down my alley, really. This is by Dave Grissom and Stephen Graffelli. Nice gatefold, but it's got Mike Marshall on mandolin, Mark O'Connor's on guitar, Bob Wasserman on bass, and some other musicians on it as well. If you've ever heard of Dave Grissom and his dog music, which is it's kind of like a swing jazz a little bit, but with maybe a little bit more of a bluegrass tinge to it. But I've always liked Stephen Graffelli, his violin playing, and he's played a lot with Joe Pass as well. So yeah, a good album. Then I picked up a couple of organ albums. This is has a little water damage here on the bottom, but it's Organ Together with Evelyn Jones. And yeah, I'm trying to pick up more and more organ albums. I found this one at the show. It's a two LP set of various cuts of organ, and it shows all the albums over here that on the other side that the music comes from. But yeah, I was happy to find it, and it's in pretty good shape on Vanguard Records. And then I found a guy there at the show that was handling some classical, and most of the stuff was kind of rock oriented, more rock than anything. But I found a guy there that was local to town. His name was Kenneth, and struck up a conversation with him. And he has a few classical albums on his table. He said he had more if I was interested, out in his van. And he let me go out to his van and kind of pick through some of it. This is piano quartets with Peter Serkin on the piano, which I've heard of. And this is on Everyman Classics, Vanguard Everyman Classics, so I'm wondering if that's part of the Vanguard label. But yeah, pretty good album, even though it is on budget, and I was happy to get it. Here was another one. I didn't know any of the composers on here, as you can see at the top, but it is what I like about stuff like this is that it's bassoon is one of the main instruments, or the instruments that they highlight on Turnabout Vox Records. Again, another budget label, but kind of chamber pieces, and it looks like it came from the library from the sticker down here. But yeah, it's a nice mellow album, just the type of thing I like. There used to be a show on called Performance Today, and they would play stuff like this. This is on a Sony Red Seal Schoenberg, Peter Serkin with the Aizawa, I guess he's the conductor, piano concertos, and with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And it's real nice. I like it a lot. It's sort of oh golly, modern classical, a little bit of dissonance and a little bit of atonality is in it, so for some it might take a little bit to get used to, but I liked it right away. This one is a one I found for $1 in a bin, but it's Beethoven Quartet, Janaik. I don't know how you pronounce the name here. Janaik Quartet. I'll have to read the liner notes on back, and maybe it'll tell something a little bit more about them. But it is like, oh golly, a string quartet. Says they were formed studying at the Academy of Music, and so on and so forth. But I take it they're a European quartet. First violin, second violin, viola, and cello. This is one on, I believe it's RCA, and this is Tchaikovsky and Rimsky-Korsakov symphony with some. There's a violin solo in it. I don't buy a lot of symphonic albums much anymore. I've got a lot on CD already, and really you can kind of go online to any of the music sites and listen to a lot of that stuff. I think this Sony Red Seal here, the way that artwork looks, is supposed to be a really good printing of a lot of this classical works, and I've already listened to the album, and it sounded nice. I mean, but I don't know if that's the exact one. There's a guy on YouTube that talks about that kind of stuff, and he would know more about it than me. But I've got this album too. It's a 2-record set album, the Varus album. And I've known about this composer for years. Back when I was a teenager, I picked up this album here, along with this one after it. Me and my family were going up to Colorado, and I can't remember where we stopped off, but they had like a little old mall there. This is Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. And just the way this album looked appealed to me. You know, I had not ever heard of the band, but I just kind of was, you know, infatuated with the way this album looked. And I thought, man, what does this sound like? But anyway, when I finally got it home and listened to it, it kind of blew my mind a little bit. It's very kind of avant-garde for the time. But one of the quotes right down here is by Edgar Varus, and it says, the present-day composer refuses to die, July 1921. And the same phrase or adage shows up on here as well, and I'm not going to be able to find it. Well, it's in real small writing where my finger's at right there, but the same thing is there. The modern day composer refuses to die, so by Edgar Varus, and that's who this is. But I've got there's a Frank Zappa book that I didn't bring with me, but it's the smaller one. Maybe I can show it at some point in time, but it's the better of the two. There's one that's called The Didactics of Frank Zappa or something like that. I didn't like that one as well, and it's a big thick book, but it's just I didn't care for the way it was written. But anyway, in that other book, Frank Zappa talks about Edgar Varus, and when he bought this album, he said it had a lot of drums in it, and very strange music, composed music that appealed to him right away. There's like sirens in here, like ambulance sirens or something, on it. But he said that the music of Varus kind of appealed to him right away, and I can see how, you know, something like this influenced his music or influenced him. And this probably, of all these classical albums, is by far the most far out of them. Would take a little bit getting used to, Although I've listened to some of it, and these two right here, this one as well, will probably take a little bit to get. I like this one right away, actually. In fact, I'm kind of liking both of them the more I listen to them. But yeah, I was happy to find a copy. I don't know if you can hear the music in the background, but it's from Gary Hayden's CD. I got this a couple of weeks back, and it's a real pleasant CD. It's called Two Views, and he has little liner notes here on the inside of it, and it is a real pleasant CD. Gary has a real nice knack of segueing his songs, so you can tell that he has thought about it a lot. And this one changes and gets a little bit darker and darker, and I like that. Gary is a real talented musician, and it's a CD that's well worth picking up. It has 7 parts on it, and then there's something called Fog Over the Little Ferry. That's the 8-track on here. But yeah, you can probably find this online somewhere, and I think Gary has some of this posted over on Facebook. I found this magazine as well. It was just 50 cents, I think, and it's an older magazine. Acoustic guitar, celebrating 20 years. But the reason I picked it up is it's supposed to have 240 essential albums. Your ultimate acoustic playlist. And I was just real curious as to what they had listed as the ultimate acoustical albums. I haven't gone through the whole, like here's some, and whoever had the magazine previously like underlined certain ones and checked off, you know, the albums either that they had or albums that they wanted to look into. But yeah, they're kind of done by a year, so it'd be kind of interesting to kind of peruse this magazine and see all what's in it. I kind of looked through it and kind of saw some of the albums that I had, but yeah, interesting magazine. And it's got something in here by people like Leo Kottke, Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, Michael Hedges, so on and so forth. It's kind of your typical guitar magazine in a way. I used to buy a Guitar Player back in the day, but anyway, those are some of my finds from the record show, and it was a fun event. I hope they continue to have them. They generally have one annually here. The town's not really big enough to have it much more than that, but it was a lot of fun to go to, and I hope they kind of will continue to have them. So anyway, spring's here. I saw my first snake crawling across the road the other day, and bees are buzzing up around the gutters. So I guess Texas is starting to turn into spring. Hope everybody is well, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.